All right, I'm gonna try and do this fast so that we can get to Carol's great presentation. But as always, as we prepare this presentation, we always sort of forget things that we did, and at the last minute, we're like, oh wait, didn't we do that? And so there's kind of a lot that we've done over the year, and I'm just gonna try and go quickly through the highlights. And if you have any questions, feel free to maybe hold some of them to the end so that we can answer them all together. But here we go. It's a year in review. Typically, we would do this presentation in May. So this year in review is a little bit longer than we normally would have. So that means we just did more. So we'll get started. Nicole gets to flip. Last summer, we had Carol and Gloria May do some great presentations on Broadway in 1874, and then Broadway in 1976. We had a great turnout, in fact, sold out, and just a lot of great feedback, a lot of involvement from those in the community. You can see there Mark Strauss sharing about Mabu. Charles Waite shared about his experiences operating the elevator at the Delphi Hotel, and Gloria sharing about all the major hotels that once graced Broadway. So that was sort of one of our highlights from last summer. And then we did we did a members only tour with Charles Waite of Adirondack Trust. This was a private tour done on a Saturday afternoon, limited to only 15 people, but a personal tour by Charles Waite. And it's just such a stunning building, and we're just so fortunate to have this treasure here on our downtown. And so that was one of the perks of being a member. So if you're not a member, join us, because we often host members only tours. And then we are moving on to our summer strolls. So last summer's strolls that we didn't report on were a success. We had over 400 people attend, but this year, we were a little hesitant. We didn't know whether to move forward with our summer strolls, but then upon the state allowing gatherings of a certain size, we decided that we would move forward with our summer stroll series, and we limited them to 20 per tour. We did increase the price because it is a source of funding for us, but I'm pleased to say that people felt comfortable going on our tours, wearing masks and being able to be socially distant, but while learning about all of our great historic neighborhoods and resources. So we were really pleased with that. And in part because of that tremendous success, we are going to have our first ever autumn summer strolls series. So we'll have a reminder about that at the end of the presentation. And then skipped ahead. As always, a favorite is another great tour by Gloria May. She does a Twilight cemetery tour of Green Ridge Cemetery, and that's coming up as well. That will be on October 30th, and Friday. So mark your calendars for that. Gloria gets into character and shares a great deal of information about those who are buried at Green Ridge Cemetery. And it's just, if you've never walked through the cemetery, it's beautiful, and you should take an opportunity to go through the rural cemetery that we have in our community. Another great thing that we have done, and thanks to Linda Harvey Opatek, is we've offered, in the past, we've only offered one bike tour of the Spa State Park complex. But this year, thanks to Linda's enthusiasm and energy, we are hosting 3 this year, and they've also been selling out and have been popular. So moving along, we continue to partner with Sustainable Saratoga. In the past, we did a community discussion on building heights. This was a community discussion about green buildings. I think Oftentimes people think of LEED design, but as us preservationists, as me, a dear preservationist, thinks, the greenest building is already one that's built. And oftentimes people don't think about the energy that is embodied in a building. And when you demolish a building, you lose that embodied energy, but you're also putting things into a landfill. And oftentimes new construction does not always, doesn't always use local materials. And so you're also having a lot of environmental costs through transportation. And oftentimes new construction doesn't always use local craftsmen. So we're really, we were pleased to have this partnership with Sustainable Saratoga and have that discussion. It was very informative. And moving on, poor Nicole, she has to get stuck trying to manage everything. This winter, we also had the Gangsters of Saratoga presentation with Maria Bucefaro and Greg Veach. Again, another great program. We want to thank the Inn at Saratoga for hosting these programs. I wish we could be doing things in person. And so as I see these slides of us all gathered together, I do miss it. And I have to say, giving my presentation isn't as fun and exciting in my office with Nicole listening to it after she put the presentation together, but we'll keep going. One thing that we fortunately, just in the nick of time, we were able to do a joint travel tour to Palm Springs during Mid-Century Modern Week. This was a really exciting opportunity that we partnered with the Western Landmarks Society of New York. And it was just an extraordinary almost week there. You can see the hotel that we stayed at with the palm trees and the colorful building, but we got to see Frank Sinatra's home and actually have drinks there. And then in the bottom right photo, you will see the tour group from our group and Rochester, and we are all piled onto Frank Sinatra's bed. We got to just see really great interiors, and I don't know if I need to see any more mid-century architecture after this trip, but it was amazing and a lot of fun. And we had hoped that this would just be the start of a travel tour program. Unfortunately, COVID hit. So, but thankfully we did this at the end of February and we made it in the nick of time. So hopefully when things return to normal, we will be able to do more tours. As we went into COVID, we were fortunate to be asked to be part of Cafe Lena's lunch sessions, and that was a real treat to be on the stage of Cafe Lena and share about the foundation. And if you have an interest to learn more about that and a little bit more about me, you can watch that on our YouTube channel, as well as Cafe Lena's YouTube channel as well. And then we were really, really excited to be able to host a Travers Stakes virtual race course tour the day of Travers. And we couldn't have obviously done this without special permission from NYRA to be there the day of and sort of highlight a lot of the architecture of the track. And we were fortunate to have interviews with David O'Rourke, President and CEO of NYRA, as well as Jack Knowlton, owner of Tis the Law. And so he was the winner that day, and we had him that morning, and that was a treat, as well as Matt Herf, who is the preservation consultant and architect for the New York Racing Association and has had a pivotal role in many of the projects at the track. We continued our My Community School program with second graders with the Children's Museum of Saratoga, and that was met with a lot of success. The kids love walking downtown and having the opportunity and point out buildings that they like, as well as for me to point out different things about buildings that they have never noticed. One thing that they all love is the carriage steps, and if you do look around town, sometimes I always say look up because you might miss something about a building, but you know, sometimes you just need to look down. And they had a great time. And then this summer, we also held our first Congress Park family tour. Sadly, that was the day right before the Civil War monument was vandalized. To give you a brief update on that, actually this photo was important and was shared with the city so that it could be shared with their insurance company, because they were able to file a claim to have the sculpture restored. And so have no fear, it will be back. It celebrated the 77th Volunteer Regiment for the Civil War, and certainly it was heartbreaking to see it smashed to pieces the next day after we had just highlighted it in our tour. And well, this is unfortunate. This year would have been our 10th anniversary of our Pints for Preservation pub crawl. Always a fun event, sometimes a little too much fun, but you know, we have a great time going to different pubs or bars throughout downtown and highlighting bits of their architecture and history through our architectural scavenger hunt. We are thinking of how we can move forward with that event in the upcoming month in some capacity, because I would hate to not continue to host this fundraiser, as we like to say, or I would say fundraiser. So look forward to seeing what we plan to do for that next. Giving Tuesday, we were fortunate to be able to host that at Brook Tavern. We had many of our board members do a Facebook fundraiser, and it was a tremendous success. And we just were grateful for Brook Tavern contributing that day. And again, we don't know about Giving Tuesday for this year, so keep you posted. And I have to say, as Adam mentioned, it was particularly difficult not to have our 5th annual Spring Historic Homes Tour this year. We had a great lineup of homes. We had a great house for the porch party. And so it was great educational programs that we were planning to host this year. And it was a disappointment not to be able to do it. However, we decided within a quick period of time that we should try and host a porch party. It didn't quite work out like we had thought. We thought everybody could be outside on their porches and having takeout to help support our local businesses. As you can see in the picture, I am wearing my mittens and my hat and coat. It snowed. Who knew that it would? Well, this is upstate New York, so we shouldn't be surprised that we had snow. But I want to thank the New York Racing Association, the Saratoga Builders Association, the Adirondack Trust Company, and Venaccio and Julian Co., because they were our major sponsors for the Historic Homes Tour this year. And because of their generosity, you know, the event was not as devastating. Not having the event was not as devastating as it could have been. We had a porch decorating contest. One was Saratoga themed, one was like COVID thing, and we had giveaways. The board was wonderful, and a way to incentivize people to participate and wanting to give back again to all those businesses who have supported us over the years. Generously donated to buy gift certificates that we could use for the event, and recognize people who sent in their pictures and participated. We had people participate from Texas to Kentucky. As far as England, I believe the video has had over 8,000 views. If you have not checked it out, I encourage you to put it on and listen to Rich Ortiz's great music, and maybe sit on your porch before it gets too much colder. But anyway, it was a great success, and I want to thank everybody who was a part of it. And hopefully next year we will be on the porch of 748 North Broadway having a celebration together. Hopefully you have seen my articles that highlight the history, the architecture, and why preservation is so important. I write for Simply Saratoga magazine, the Preserving Saratoga articles, as well as I write articles for the Saratogian Preservation Matters. And, you know, it's a labor of love for me. I enjoy it. I always learn something new myself. And it's been an honor to write about the people that I've highlighted in these articles. So if you haven't seen a Simply Saratoga magazine article, I encourage you to pick one up. I'm particularly proud of the one for B. I learned so much. So check that one out, and I think we can move on. Hopefully you've also noticed our plaques around town. This program has been a tremendous success for us, largely because of Joan Walter and her hard work. She's established a bar that is not easy to duplicate. Mitch Cohen, who is one of our members and who is receiving a rehabilitation award, I'll get to that later. He expressed an interest in learning about the history of his home, and he has a passion for research for his through Ancestry.com. And I said, well, we could use assistance with our historic plaque program because we have a tremendous backlog. For anybody who's waiting for one, we are working on it. Due to COVID, we are limited in our resources with the Saratoga room at the Saratoga Springs Public Library being closed, as well as the city historian's office being closed. So we are diligently doing what we can to do that. I just wrote an article about Mitch and Susan Cohen's rehabilitation of their home, and that will be in the upcoming article about Simply Saratoga. But he's been a tremendous help, and I believe he's already helped research and write 6 or so house histories. Hopefully you know that we continue to advocate for best preservation practices, and we do that by following the ordinance for the Historic Review and Architectural Review Districts, as well as promoting the design guidelines, which are on our website. If you are not familiar with those, I encourage you to come to our website or the city's. We did put these together in partnership with the city of Saratoga Springs several years ago. Tom Frost offered his artistic hand for the illustrations. This is such an important part of the role that we have. We're the voice for the buildings that have no voice. And this is sort of the basis of how we determine our advocacy positions. So we will continue on. Again, we just try and be a resource for historic homeowners. We, again, with the city of Saratoga Springs, we put together the Wait Before You Renovate brochure. We will be doing a mailing of that, again, to all the property owners in the historic districts in the near future. We also, on our relatively newly designed website, we have a resource page, and I encourage you to check that out. It has great information about our tax credit program, not ours personally, but the state and the federal tax credit programs. Here you can see we assisted Liz Israel and David Hayden with their federal, commercial, and state tax credit. And I think you probably have all seen the results of 15 Franklin Street. It's just been such a bright spot for that corner. and they took great care in restoring the French doors that had been removed at one point along the east side of the building, and removing the aluminum siding and restoring window openings. And it's just been such an honor to be a part of that project. And also another project that we helped with was 184 Spring, which was another Israel family. They benefited from the New York State homeowner tax credit. And we have just recently assisted the building owner of 186 Circular Street to submit an income producing federal and state tax credit application. So we are here to help people through that process and guide them through that, and we are happy to do that. Last year, we completed an economic impact study confirming many of the things that we knew about historic preservation, that we've always said that property values are higher in historic districts. And that actually was proven to be the case, whether it was style, age, or condition. They retain their value at a better than those not in the historic district. And that increased property value, although it's a low percentage of land in the city, actually provides a great source of income for the city of Saratoga Springs, the county, and the school district. In addition, it attracts young firms and small firms to historic districts. But what we were thrilled about is this: during COVID, our study was included in the 24 Reasons publication by Donovan Ripkema of Place Economics. And you can see Saratoga has some prominent features in this, but this is literally was recognized across the country and around the world. And so it was just a great opportunity to highlight what preservation can do for small communities, because often these economic impact studies are for larger cities. And so we were honored to be a part of this publication. And if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to look for it, and we will have it on our website if we don't already have it. I think we do, as I look to Nicole. But great information about why preservation is so important for not only Saratoga Springs, but for our country. I'm going to just go through a quick few advocacy. You'll see 53 Putnam. You can see on the left how we initially was proposed a 6-story structure. We advocated for it to be reduced in height and scale. And you can see that the proposal, while it has not moved forward, but this was the direction that they were moving, and the DRC was supportive of our comments. This is a project that we still had concerns about scale and mass, and in fact, they revised the design of the building, and we actually preferred the earlier design that you see on the top right, despite its height and scale, which we still thought was too much. And it's only a few feet behind the Episcopal parish house or rectory. I always get that confused with that building, and I apologize to anybody who is watching from Bethesda. Despite our comments, this building was approved by the Design Review Commission, as you can see it on the bottom of the slide. Just a brief comment about, the parking garage. I know many, regardless, not everybody is supportive of the parking garage. We felt that there is a need for a parking garage, and it is not located in a historic district, but we felt its initial design several years ago had 100 feet of parking, 3 levels over Maple Avenue, which would really sort of change that corridor that connects historic sites from Old Bryan Inn to Congress Park to City Hall. And we were pleased with the new design, that it went back to what we advocated for originally, was a pedestrian bridge. And you can see that historic image in the middle that shows the original Congress Hall Hotel wrought iron pedestrian bridge that led to its ballroom. And you can see how now under construction, you can see the new walkway, and it's transparent and light and really doesn't change the whole dynamic of Maple Avenue. Plus the project was also reduced in scale and mass. Some of you may not remember, but at one point, Skidmore College wanted to change their entrance at North Broadway, sort of completely changing the feel of North Broadway. And we felt strongly that this was not the most appropriate treatment for the street and the size and scale of the signage. And while it has changed, it did not move forward, and we will continue to advocate for this overall to be reduced in some capacity, and perhaps this will not be moving forward in the near future, but these are the things that sometimes people don't realize that we're commenting on. Another project that we commented on was the City Hall in 2018 was struck by lightning. It had water and fire damage, and this is a local landmark, and in fact its interior is landmarked, and we advocated for this to go before the Design Review Commission. The city at times thinks that they do not need to go through their own review process. We felt strongly, and we encouraged the Department of Public Works to go through that process. And at one point, the southern stairs, as you went into the City Hall, was going to be removed to make way for an elevator. We objected, and we advocated for the stairs to remain. And then there was also discussion of changing the interior to have a Victorian appearance, which was not based on any historic documentation. In the 1930s, City Hall had a significant renovation, and that's why what you see today, and it has an Art Deco feel. And that is what we strongly advocated for. So you can see here that they kept the stairs, they kept the Art Deco, and they really stayed in keeping with what it historically looked like, but also enhanced many aspects of City Hall. And this is currently before our land use board. This is 269 Broadway, immediately adjacent to Spa Catholic. This is a project that we are indicating that its height, scale, and mass is too large for the site and is not in context with its neighboring properties. So stay tuned. When our last preservation alert was sent out, we are very appreciative to those members who tuned in and actually, not only tuned in, but also spoke or submitted written comments. It does make a difference when the Design Review Commission hears from our members. They do listen, and it encourages them to take positions that maybe perhaps they wouldn't feel empowered otherwise to do. And so I encourage you to remain involved and look for our preservation alerts. Endangered properties, yes, these have been on our list for a long time. This last year, significant changes were made to the vacant building registry, increased fines, requirements for insurance and bonds that are starting to be disincentives for people to keep their historic buildings. The Smiley Bracket Cottage, I had my first meeting ever with the owner, and we hope to be able to tour the buildings and have a better understanding of their conditions. I'm not quite sure where that will lead, but at least it's a discussion that we've started to have. And my understanding, last update I have heard, 69 Phila Street, which is the red brick home, it is supposedly under contract by somebody who plans to rehabilitate it, and that remains to be seen. But otherwise, if that does not move forward, both the white one and the red one, the owners are to submit an application to the Design Review Commission, because you can see that they've made changes over the years, which quote unquote have been temporary, but they've been there for over 7 years. And so it's time that they be compliant with the design review or the historic review ordinance. We look at unauthorized work, and we point that out, and we often report that to the city. The previous owner of 62 Van Dam Street literally constructed that whole rear addition, installed a new aluminum inappropriate door without any review by the Design Review Commission. I'm pleased to say that that owner sold the property to new owners who have done a great job rehabilitating the home that you see. It's just a bright spot on that block. 74 Caroline Street, I pointed out these changes that were made without DRC approval when they had to come before the Design Review Commission for another aspect of their property. The DRC basically said you need to remedy the changes that you've made in the past. So look forward to seeing that building change and be in a better position. The race course, we remain the only local advisory opinion for capital improvements at the Saratoga Race Course. So we had a role in what the 1863 Club looks like. I think it was a success, and I'm pleased to have worked with Matt Herf. He's just been a tremendous asset to NYRA. You can see the Mary Lou Whitney Pavilion and the new daycare center. These are the types of projects we comment on often, and we will continue to be that advocate for that good balance between modernization and preservation. And then we do restoration, and we successfully raised that $50,000 for the First Baptist Church. We again want to thank the Alfred Z. Solomon Charitable Trust for their $25,000 contribution, which was really made this project be able to move forward quickly. But I also want to thank all the members of the community that contributed. Nearly $20,000 was raised from people in the community to help this church and their congregation. And the work has started, and Guy Salvio of All in the Glass Studio 2 has done tremendous work, and we look forward to that project finishing the 5 windows that were earmarked as the most deteriorated and need. And it's hard to believe that 5 years ago we completed the restoration of the Spirit of Life, and the landscape had overgrown, and with the reduction in budget and staff at the city, that growth had only gotten worse. We earlier in the summer, upon learning that the geranium budget was going to be reduced, the foundation contributed $750 to ensure that the geraniums and around the Spirit of Life remained the same and were not reduced too much. And we also, just this past week, we've organized volunteers to help do the landscape maintenance. And over the summer, between volunteers who helped, 2 volunteers that helped to deadhead and take care of the geraniums, along with those that donated their time most recently, over 100 volunteer hours has gone into this project. So please be sure to check out the Spirit of Life, and I'm sure we will continue to do volunteer days. So if you have an interest, or even if you're not a green thumb, I don't think we would turn you away. And last but not, I don't know how many slides we have. I'm trying to be fast. We support local businesses. We help to secure picnic benches in the park to encourage people to eat out, take out, and we promote our community partners and their programs. We help, we promote UPH, we promote the Saratoga National Museum of Racing and the Children's Museum, and of course the History Museum. And we are so fortunate to have so many great partners. And new since we last met, we have Anne, who has joined us. She is our administrative assistant, and recently we've increased her hours, and we are thrilled to have her. She's done a great job. And just for fun, Leo has now started to come to the office. He's not so productive as we would hope, but he's always brings a nice smile. And then we are so thrilled to have Gabriel, who joined us this past year, and he's just he comes in and he just is so cute. That's all I have to say. We worked from home March through June, and it was not always easy, but we still kept going, and so have no fear. We did not take a break. But during that time, that's when we really focused on moving to Little Greenlight, a new donor management system, and MailChimp. I have to give a big thank you to a donor who helped underwrite that and also helped to transfer the data. And then a big shout out to Anne, our administrative assistant, who really took the charge and helping to clean up that data and enter things and really put together a handbook. And it's just something that we're still learning and moving forward with. If you're not getting our emails, please be sure to let us know. And we just think this is a great tool for us as we move forward. And Nicole, 5 years. I don't know how anybody puts up with me for that long, but I'm glad she does. And so we had to celebrate socially distant, but it was fun to do so, and we're so proud to have her. We all know I get choked up at some point. And then for our first Autumn Stroll series, we will be doing, this Sunday, I will be doing North Broadway. If you haven't come, I encourage you to do it. It should be nice and cool, and it will be, you always learn something, as I'm still learning more and adding to the tour, so it just keeps getting longer, but it's always informative. In our upcoming programs, you'll see those. And then we're doing some more virtual programs. And now I believe I turn it over to Carol. Oh, wait, we have a joint program with the Saratoga County History Center talking about, does the past have a future, historic preservation in Saratoga County? So join us next Tuesday with Teddy, Carrie Warner, and I can barely, John Schur. I'm sorry, I don't have my readers on. So join us for that. And we have, normally this is like my favorite event of the year. I mean, I know I have a couple of favorites between the pub crawl and the historic home store and the porch party, but this is probably the most heartwarming. And we had so many recognition awards, and it's so unfortunate that we couldn't be all together to recognize the homeowners and those the building owners and the people in the city who do so much to invest their time, money, and sweat into preserving our resources. This is just a glimpse of those that you will see, which we are we've been busy giving awards, doing videos, and now we just have to master editing videos. And we have one video that will be ready, and we will hopefully post tomorrow as our plan. And that is the one about 302 Nelson Avenue with Mitch and Sue Cohen. And stay tuned as we roll these out. It was a little bit longer of a process than we hoped, but there were so many. And so with that, I want to say thank you to them and congratulations. And I think if you're not a member, please join us. It's important, and it helps us and provides important support. And thank you to everyone, because we couldn't do it without your support. And I think now we go to Carol. Oh, not that Carol.
Well, Carol,
we love that.
If you'd like to do this presentation, I'd love to have you start. Okay.
We love that, Carol, but
we do love that, Carol. Please bear with me for just 1 second. I am new to hosting a meeting at Zoom, and I have to get the chat function up here first. So hopefully we can make it interactive. I'm used to teaching and being with a live audience, and I know all of you would like to be live with me, but we're not. So I know we're running a little late. If you have to leave, I certainly will understand. And I would like to make it as interactive with the chat function. And Sam, you're going to have to help me by just shouting out things. So can you all hear me? I don't know if we.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I was waiting for because I wasn't getting. I'm not getting the chat function here like I would like on my screen. So that's my problem. Okay. Okay, so I was lucky enough last year to be one of the 15 people that got to go on that behind the scenes tour of the Adirondack Trust Company. And I have written, like Sam, for Simply Saratoga. And I decided I wanted to start a new column where I wanted to think, you know, Saratoga is changing so much, but what did it look like many years ago? And I wanted to kind of peel back the layers of time and look at different places. So this tour certainly inspired me. And I said, I have to make this my first column. Like many of you, the Adirondack Trust Company was an important part of my entire life. As we look at this photo right here, and much has been written about it. So I certainly don't profess to be an expert. If you ever want to read Field Horn's book, Strength of the Adirondacks, or Samantha's column she did in 2016, I encourage you to do
Carol,
so.
you need to Carol, you need to screen share.
Oh, you're not seeing it. Okay, I was screen sharing, but I'm so sorry. Okay.
Well, we enjoyed getting your introduction with your beautiful face.
Oh, okay. Well, see, you need to able me. It said I'm disabled.
Oh,
you disabled it.
Oh, Nicole is taking care of that. She's in command control. She's working on it.
Okay. But Carol Curto, you can take over anytime. Okay. So as soon as, so while we're waiting for that to take place, how many of you have ever been in the Adirondack Trust Company building? If you want to do the chat, okay, or raise your hand or thing. So most of you are very familiar with it. And I'm still waiting for that screen share to be enabled so we can take over and put on my presentation. So Samantha, are you going to have another one of those behind the scene tours?
Well, if I can twist Charles's arm, I certainly will when we can.
Okay.
So I'm checking with Nicole.
Okay, I'm still waiting to get permission. Okay. Anyway, I had always written columns for these Simply Saratoga. I had written about corner stores, mom and pop stores. I did restaurants, family-owned businesses. But I really like looking at the different things that a building has been. And this one totally captivated me. And
Carol, I'm going to pause you for 1 second.
Okay.
Carol Curto, I think you have to click on your name to remove your host privilege. I can't take it back from you. Sorry about this, everyone. The beauty of Zoom. Oh.
Okay.
All right. Carol Curto, if you click on your name and you see under participants, you should see something that talks about you being the host.
Oh dear.
I know pressure's on, Carol. I'm sorry. I can't take it back.
We both got 5th grade. So Carol, you know, just.
What am I supposed to do? Mute?
Do you see your, under participants, do you see your name and it says host next to your name?
Oh dear, yes.
Can you click on your name?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And then there should be something that says to basically give up your hosting capabilities.
Rename?
Nope.
Host me? Oh dear. Click on my name. Now what?
And there should be something about hosting on there with your name. Sorry again, everybody.
What?
Sorry, host me. How did that happen? So what do I click on? Rename?
You know what? Can you click on Carol Godette's name and it doesn't say make host? That'll be our other workaround.
Make host, yes.
Yes, do that. That's perfect. Thanks, Carol. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that was my fault. Thanks, Carol.
Right, yes.
Okay, we'll try again here. Okay, am I now the host?
You should be.
You are now the host. I saw it. So now you should be able to screen share.
Okay, now I should be able to screen share. Okay.
There we go. Yes.
Okay, thank you. See, this Zoom technology, not always as easy as you'd like. Okay, so here's a picture under Adirondack Trust, a 1960s view and a view as we might see it today. As you look at this, what do you notice? And if anybody wants to put it in the chat function, what do you notice is a major difference between these two different views? And my chat is not coming up. So Samantha, if you just want to call out to me some things we're seeing.
Nobody has chimed in yet. Nobody has chimed in yet.
I'm waiting.
The building on the left became ugly.
Oh, I like, thank you, Mitch. None ugly. Okay. Restoration on the left hand. Okay. Because you know
Sweet mid-century design in that connector. Caroline said, and so yes.
Okay.
We have some feedback there.
Adam was the first one to say the drive-through. So I didn't announce this, but I am going to be giving out prizes. I have Ben and Jerry's coupons. So I'll be calling out if it's a prize question. I should have said that at the beginning. So yes, as many of you mentioned, the drive-through. In 2000, the drive-through was refaced and Tom Frost did this project and he put the brick on it. And it was an aesthetic reason. It was partly to blend in more with the Burke building, which is next door and had become part of the bank. It's where the mortgage department and other offices were. And it kind of took away that 60s appeal and brought it more up to date. So
could I just add one thing, Carol? Tom wanted to, when I interviewed Tom for an article that I wrote about him for Simply Saratoga, that actually is one of his favorite projects of all the projects he's done. And he always felt that the mid-century drive-through took away, because it was the same color as the white marble, it took away from the prominence of the main bank building. So just a little insight to Tom's perspective.
Okay, good. So in our lifetimes and even in our parents' lifetimes, the Adirondack Trust Company has always graced that prominent corner of Broadway and Church. But it wasn't the only structure ever there. So how did this come about? Well, actually, there's been 3 different named buildings at this site. The first one of them was the Warren Residence. And then there was a building called the Westcott Building, and then the Adirondack Trust Company, but not always as we know it today. So let's look at this. This is a so-called crayon map, and it's called that because Skidmore students used crayons and they hand colored it to show the early landowners of Saratoga Springs. So as we look at the orange colorings, do you see that? We can see that this land was owned by Henry Walton. But keep in mind that this map was done on a rather modern day Samuel Mott map, and Lake Avenue did not exist at that time. But Henry Walton was the owner of this land originally. We get to see a little closer view here in what's called a so-called crayon, map from 1813 of Henry Walton. Joan, I saw at one point, Joan Walter was on, I don't know if she's still on, but she wrote a wonderful chapter in Fieldhorn's book, his Centennial History book, about the three original landmen of Saratoga. And Henry Walton was one of them. And if you can see, there's an arrow that points to that property. Henry Walton came to Saratoga from New York City after studying law under Aaron Burr. He came for the purpose of taking over some real estate that was left to him from his father and his uncle. Oops, somebody might want to look at their mute button and make sure you're on mute, because I think we're hearing some other things. Okay, so what happened? How did it go from Henry Walton to a residence? This is a Bevan map from 1850. And thanks to the help, Mitch Cohen, my neighbor, you're getting a lot of shout outs today. Mitch has become an expert on deed searches. So he helped me find the original deed dated August 24th, 1833. For the sale of the property, Henry Walton sold it to a Judge Warren for $550. And it is detailed as 46 feet across and 150 feet going along Church Street. So we see this. Before we go on too much, let's take a look at these four corners of Broadway and Church and Lake Avenue. A Washington, D.C. preservationist described this once as the perfect four corners for the survival of a small city, because it has a bank, a post office, town hall, and a drugstore. But as we look at this map, these four corners look very different. So we have Judge Warren's. Across the street, where we think of it as the post office, Judge Warren had his sister living. She and her husband, Caroline Beach, built a house. And then kitty corner, where it would be City Hall, has not been developed yet. It's a lot. And where Megas and Curtis is, it's the Columbian Hotel. So when we think back at time in 1850, these four corners are not the perfect four corners for survival of a small city. So who is the first owner of land? Well, it's William Lafayette Warren. He came from a very prominent family. He was well regarded professionally. He was a lawyer, a judge, and a district attorney. He was very civic minded. He was really involved in community activities. And ironically, he was sat as a director of the board of the Schenectady Bank and the Bank of Saratoga Springs. Whoops, I'm sorry, excuse me. We're not getting to the right slide here. So here's the residence that he built on that corner. And it looks very different than the building we see today. He prided himself in the lawns he had and in the elm trees that surrounded the property. And it's a beautiful structure, but it's a two-story structure with a mansard roof. So in order to understand anything about a property, you have to look at the people who live there. So this 1860 census record shows us William Warren. And originally it was William Warren, his wife, and his two children who lived there. In 1860 though, I looked and I discovered there were 9 people living there. 2 of them are servants. So we kind of laugh today with COVID and the boomerang generation and how we all have kids coming back home to live with us. Well, that happened in 1858 to Judge Warren. His daughter Elizabeth was married and had 4 children, and her husband died. She was 28. She moves back in with her parents and her 4 children. And they lived there their entire lives. Elizabeth becomes the heir to the property. And she lives there until her death. And she leaves it to her youngest children, Caroline and James. They live there their entire lives as well. So this is the part where when you're trying to do research on a property, it just wasn't making sense to me. How did it go from being this beautiful home to what we're going to be seeing in just a minute? It's called the Westcott Building. And I said, well, they were Westcotts. What happened? So through the wills, city directories, the Sanborn fire maps, and news articles, I finally was able to piece together the connection. So it went from that beautiful home we saw, and Samantha helped me with this. She has a collection of the Sanborn fire maps, and it showed it being a 2-story structure and then becoming a 3-story structure. So on my research, I found out that James, who had inherited the building from his mother after she died in 1897, he was an architect. And so he altered the building and made it a multi-use. He and his sister Caroline both lived upstairs. Neither of them ever married. And they leased out the building below to the Adirondack Trust Company. He set up a lease, leasing the space initially for 5 years. Now, if you look behind the Adirondack Trust, now it's one big building, but it was a separate building and it was called the Warren Building. And James and Caroline also owned the Warren Building. So the Adirondack Trust Company opened its doors January 2nd, 1902. And here we see the $15,000 manganese steel vault that was transported down Church Street on the railroad tracks and put in the Westcott Building. It was the largest safe vault in this area, and it remained in place when the bank was rebuilt. Here's an interior shot of what the bank first looked like in that building, the Westcott Building. It really wasn't designed to be a bank, but if you look at the arrow, there's a brown arrow where I tried to point to where the vault was in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the Adirondack Trust was an immediate success. You can see what they started with for their capital in 1902. And an article in the Schuylerville newspaper said that in 4 months, its deposits had grown to over $600,000 from $100,000. That's a lot of money for that time. They always knew that if they grew big enough, they would want to find a more permanent location. And so here's where we have to go back to the people who are living there. So remember, I mentioned Caroline and her brother James lived there. James died in 1909, and Caroline became the sole owner of the building. She was a very civic-minded woman. She was ahead of her time. And I loved reading newspaper accounts about her motoring with her friends around the lake. At this time, there were only 2 million cars in all of the United States. Not a lot of cars were owned by women, but she had a car. And one day, actually, in November 30th, 1915, she was out motoring in Coes and she passed away. I'm not really sure exactly what happened. The details were not outlined in the paper, but on her death, her will left the properties that she owned to her grandniece and a nephew, and they lived in Whitehall, apparently not interested in owning this property. So they promptly sold it to the Adirondack Trust Company. Demolition, I'm having trouble, of the building began just a few months after her death. This is in March 6th, 1916. And the bank still continued to operate across the street where we know as Megas and Curtis. And every night they took the deposits and they built this bank around the vault that just stayed in place, and they would walk them across the street and put them in the vault. Okay, so here's the construction, and they're laying the cornerstone here in this rather famous picture. I know, Samantha, you used this in your article that you published. And we see Senator Brackett reading a letter to be put in the memory box. And when they opened up the memory box in 2016, Charles read this letter that was included by Senator Brackett. This is one of my favorite quotes about the Adirondack Trust because I really think it's so true. It truly is the handsomest bank building in the state, I'd say even beyond our state. When they decided to build a new bank, they put out bids and they got 9 bids. Alfred Hopkins was an architect known for his prison designs, and he proved to be an excellent choice. Not only did he build a secure structure like he did with prison structures, but he had incredible attention to detail, right down to he sourced out marble from the Adirondacks, and he sourced out marble and he had bookend marble, meaning that they cut it open and they would see the veins and match them in the construction. Hopkins was quoted as saying, "Every ornament, whether interior or exterior, has a definite relation to the work of the Adirondack Trust Company, whether in reference to the traditions of the past or aspirations of the future." And here's the plans for the first floor. Anything scream out at any of you? Just put it in the chat box. First person gets a Ben & Jerry's coupon. I see Caroline says she wants that prize. Okay.
I know she wants that prize.
Anything scream out. Okay, Sherry. Coupon rooms. Sherry, this is for you. Okay. That also screamed out. And I don't know a lot of information about the coupon room, but what screamed out to me was the ladies' room.
Yeah, that's what I say.
And I said, okay. Caroline says, okay, Caroline, I'll give that to you too. No men's room. Well, the ladies' room wasn't a bathroom, but at that time they were trying to encourage women to bank. Up to that point, in articles I've read at the time, women kept money in their stockings. And if they went into a bank, they would want a private place to take their money out of their stockings, which they felt was a safe hiding place. But as Charles said, they had a sumptuous commendation built to attract women who might open accounts. It was a ladies' writing room. So there was a desk in there and they were to sit in their comfort and fill out their bank papers so they wouldn't be bothered by men. So I thought that was really interesting. What is not included, because this is just the main floor, and this was part of Charles' tour that fascinated me. This bank was built with a sniper's nest. In the 1920s, banks were being robbed all the time. And so Hopkins designed a sniper's nest. The sniper went in through the roof of the bank, through a hatched door. He would lock it. And then he had a .22 Remington and with a direct sight line of the teller station. Fortunately, he never had to use that sniper, never had to use that Remington, but it was there. And it still remains today, but it's closed off. But again, fascinating. Who knew? Okay, so as we look at the bank in this photo, I believe this is from the 40s. There's something missing from the bank that we would have today. Anybody notice anything? Oops. And Carol, yes, the vault is in the same place. Diane says the flag. Okay, Diane, I'll give that to you. The flag on top of the building. Okay, what else? I'll give you a little hint. Well, look to the side.
Parking lot.
There's no drive-through.
I was going to say, Caroline,
Yeah,
thought you'd have this one.
okay, there is a building there, and that building was sold. Mitch was trying to help me with that as well. Yeah, the drive-through. The drive-through doesn't exist at this time. And then also, as you look behind it at the Warren building, the Warren building is very separate and looks, it's a commercial business. You could see a shoe store there. In 1974, when Charles Waite was brought in to help his father, Newman, this was one of his early projects, and it was an adaptive reuse project that the Saratoga Associates worked on, and they designed arched windows. And so when you enter now through the back of the bank, you have those beautiful arched windows, and it just kind of gently leads you into the bank. But back then, it was a very different entrance. Well, it wasn't part of the bank. It was a very separate thing. So let's step inside today, not as it was. And actually here, I know you were talking about Bee Sweeney, and I should have made this part of my presentation. So when Bee died, she was a dear friend, and she left me her postcard collection. And this is from her postcard collection. And I'll have to add this to the presentation. And it shows what the interior was like and what the teller stations were like when it was first open. But let's take a look at the interior today. And much of what Hopkins did still remains. And what really strikes out, I know, Samantha, I loved how you said you were always saying, look up. And this is a building where you definitely have to be looking up, because when you do, you see this beautiful Roman lettering in gold leaf that highlights the sentiments that Hopkins said bankers would like their community members to focus on. He wanted to expound on the virtues of economy and preparing for the future. So the next time you go into the Adirondack Trust, I encourage you to just look up and kind of pick your favorite quote. For me, it's on the south wall, and it says, "The first years of a man must make provisions for the last." And going back to Carol Curto's comment, you can also see the vault still in the same place today. Also, another fascinating thing that Charles shared with us was about the chandelier. And one of the things that Hopkins did throughout the whole building is to carry the Adirondack Park theme throughout, and stags are featured throughout the building. So as we look at this chandelier, Charles told us that when he first took over for his dad, Newman, who had an untimely death, these chandeliers were blackened. You couldn't see any detail at all. And so one of the first things he did was he hired a New York City firm to come and clean them. And they pleasantly discovered that they were gold washed, and they had colored green and red enamel. And again, the next time you go in, they're just striking. And Charles was baffled, and he said, well, gold doesn't tarnish. How did this happen? Anybody have an idea?
Yeah.
Another prize.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Steve, yes. Molly, you were close. Candle smoke. Steve, yep, you were the first one. Cigarette smoke. So for 100 years, cigarette smoke, nicotine had risen up in the building, and it had discolored these chandeliers. And so now they're restored to their original beauty. Okay, so most of us don't get to go upstairs behind the desk where the president would sit, behind the balcony, but here we're going to get to go upstairs into the boardroom to the interior shot. And we can see the exquisite detail of this beautiful and stately.
Well, here's the boardroom of the Adirondack Trust. I'm gonna look at it.
Diane,
Diane.
mute yourself.
Okie dokie.
The chair is
Hi,
here.
Davey.
The chairs here are made of a very durable animal skin that was not endangered. Charles explained to us. He went through, so this was one of my favorite parts of this behind the scenes tour. He went through each individual piece here. And since we're short on time, I won't take you through it all, but hopefully you'll get to see it someday. Another thing that has always been there. In fact, my husband said, I said, do you know anything about this statue? And he said, well, yeah, my company painted it. And I said, well, what is it? And his answer to me, he said, well, something with the constellations. He didn't even know. So maybe you, like he, walked by it many times, saw it, and never really realized what it was all about. But again, this was one of Charles Waite's first projects when he came to the bank. And it's at the back entrance by the ATM. And it's a tribute to Charles Dowd. Now, if you don't know who he is, Charles Dowd was not originally from Saratoga, but he lived in Saratoga most of his life. He taught at what is now Skidmore at the seminary. And he was the person at the time, we didn't have standardized time. So he was the first person to articulate the concept of standardizing time. It really created havoc in railroads, not having time zones. So if you got on a train in Portland, Maine, and you rode to Buffalo, you would go through 4 different time zones because at that time, everybody calibrated time according to the sun's noon mark.
Can you put a little louder?
So that was very unusual. And so Dowd said, well, railroads need to have a standard time.
Get me out of there.
Oh, sorry.
So he proposed the idea of the United States just having 4 time zones, each 15 degrees wide.
Maria, oh, you got muted. All right.
Ironically, Charles Dowd was killed in Saratoga crossing the street by a train. So we still memorialize him in the back of the Adirondack Trust. So the next time that you go in the back, check out this sculpture. We are fortunate not only to have such a beautiful structure, but a wonderful business that supports our community in so many ways. Here we see singers at a Victorian street walk. And thanks to the Saratoga dog walkers, I just had to take this shot and put it in because I think it captures how the Adirondack Trust is committed to everyone in our city. I know they even at the drive-through give dog biscuits out. They have a wonderful booklet. And again, because we were running a little late on time, I shortened my presentation, but it was called How We Built It. And they gave it to us at the tour. And I know if you went in and asked, they would probably find you a copy. And Alfred Hopkins outlines his whole process of building this amazing building that we're so lucky to have. So if you have any questions, I'm going to be wrapping up, but I'd love to see if I could answer them for you. I don't see any coming up, so maybe I answered your questions. I am going to be doing, thank you. I am going to be doing a more in-depth presentation. This was kind of a teaser to just kind of show you and get you introduced to the concept of on this spot. I'm going to be doing a more in-depth program for Sam. October 1st, Sam?
Yes. Yes, October 1st.
October 1st, where we're going to look at researching a home. I did my home and I was blown away with what I found out, and other locations around Saratoga. Like Sam, I in my column that I believe this next one's coming out next week. I did Convention Hall. And again, every time I look in deeply into the layers of what was in a place, I'm always surprised to find out things that just totally blow my mind. So thank you so much.
Am I unmuted?
Carol, did you?
I have a comment.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Just a comment, a wonderful story, very, very briefly, that perhaps everyone has heard, but I hadn't heard it before. Charles Waite told me the story. Of course, he was the president of the bank's son. So he grew up in the bank, and he was assigned to every possible position every task to do. And one of his positions while he was in high school, still a very young man, was to call people who had overdrawn accounts. And of course, that was long before the day of computers. And so he called a Skidmore undergraduate student, a darling young girl, and he explained that she had overdrawn her checking account. And the girl said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She said, "I'll be right down and take care of it." And so sure enough, within half an hour, this girl walked into Charles Waite's office, and there he was, a young man. And the girl pulled out her checkbook and said, "How much do I owe you?" It's a very funny story. You didn't laugh.
Oh, no, it's cute. Well, I think what that story illustrates is the commitment that the bank has to the people and the commitment the people of our community have back to the bank.
Yes.
It's mutual respect in every sense of the way. I see Vincent has a question about the cost of construction. I don't have the exact figure off the top of my head. I'll try to find that out and get back to you. But one thing that was really important in the construction was that it was funded separately. This being a trust company, the rules work a little differently than a regular bank. And so it was funded by 4 separate individuals. And that's all I can tell you about the cost off the top of my head. Okay.
Well, Carol, thank you so much. I can't wait for your next presentation. I know it will be fabulous because every presentation you do for us is fabulous. And we always learn something new, and I'm sure everybody here tonight did as well. So mark your calendars for October 1st.
Well, hopefully we'll have the whole Zoom thing down a little better. This is a little tricky managing.
It is a little tricky. It is a little tricky. It's a learning curve, but we've done some practice. So the one thing that you have to do before you end, Carol, or for you to end, is you need to switch the host back to SSPF.
I sure will.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
Okay. I'm all like, I don't know how to tell you to do it.
I practiced this earlier today. Let's see. Participants. Yeah, now I know how
If Carol Curdo can do it without practice, you'll figure
without
it out.
practice, I should be able. I did the stop share and it's just not going.
All right, Carol, you need to go to participants and where it says SSPF.
Okay.
Click on that and say make host.
SSPF. And I clicked on it and it asked me to unmute it. Okay.
Well, if you want to you could just unmute Adam, I think. I think we would be okay with just doing that.
I can
and we'll just let Adam wrap us up.
Perfect. Well, Carol, thank you for doing that. That was absolutely fantastic. And yeah, we're going to wrap up because I'm in the process of refinishing our original heart pine floors in our 1900 Victorian, which means that I have all the windows open in the first floor of the house and I am freezing at this point. So, but before we do say goodbye, I want to give a special thanks to the board of directors for all the hard work that they've put in and that they continue to put in. Sam did a great job over the, analyzing and presenting what the foundation has done in the past years. And that comes with a bunch of hard work, behind the scenes conversations, dedication, and commitment from not only the staff, but the board of directors. I also want to take a special moment to thank the staff, Sam, the executive director, for all the hard work that she has done, continues to do. Her passion and dedication to historic preservation is unmatched. And I think that that is very clear in this organization. Nicole Babby, our membership and programs director, who is also our behind the scenes IT person, who has done a fantastic job with memberships and programs and making all this stuff look like it is absolutely seamless. Anne McDonough, our administrative assistant, who has learned all the new donor management stuff and done a fantastic job, making sure that we are staying in touch with our members, among other things. And Patty Herrick, who is our bookkeeper, who is making sure that every penny is counted by the end of the month, and she's doing a wonderful job with that. Last but not least, I certainly want to thank all the members, the donors, the sponsors, anybody who is out there who is talking about the foundation, what it does, what it means to this community. If you are not a member, I encourage you to please be a member and encourage other people to be members. We are a membership-driven organization, and we really need that support to continue to preserve what Saratoga has to offer. So head on over to saratogapreservation.org. There's a bunch of great resources. Check out some of the bios and all the cool, the people who are on the board of directors. And again, thank you so much for taking the time tonight to be here to do all this stuff. Thanks to Carol for the great presentation. And I hope to, at some point in the very, very near future, be able to meet all of you, talk to you, and see you face to face, somewhat closer than 6 feet. So thank you again to everyone, and I really hope you have a fantastic evening.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take care.